I'm supposed to speak about the ADACH pavilion in Venice. I will try to be synthetical because we've got half an hour, so I have to be very fast. First of all, for those who were in Venice, and I see that there is still a little bit of confusion, you had two pavilions, one pavilion, one national pavilion for the United Arab Emirates, and one for ADACH, which I was responsible for. ADACH meaning Abu Dhabi Authority for Culture and Heritage. It's an institution which has been founded a few years ago, which is more well known till now for dealing with the heritage, for dealing with the forts in the desert, for dealing with what Emirati call intangible culture, meaning Bedouin culture, and so on and so forth. But they're also developing, and this is good, they're also developing a strategy and project in terms of modern and contemporary culture, of course, including visual culture and art. So the ADACH project is huge one, and it's what we have in Venice is really ADACH platform for visual arts in Venice. ADACH platform for visual art is again developing a certain number of initiatives in order to develop I won't say to develop culture. I don't think you grow culture like potatoes or vegetables, but it's trying to give a certain number of tools, it's trying to push a certain number of local initiatives in order to have a more open cultural development. My point of departure for the pavilion was to, in a way, introduce a certain number of facts, a certain number of works by people who are working in the Emirates for a certain number of years, and trying to deconstruct a certain number of cliches which are very alive concerning the region, whether the region is considered like futuristic paradise, whether it's considered as the opposite, the evil paradise by Mike Davis and the likes. I think that the reality is much more complex, that the possible scenarios are more than two, and so deconstructing this cliché, showing the region for what it is, so introducing not the generic dream of certain people, but the heterogeneous reality of the Emirates now, and also trying to deconstruct a certain flattened view, which is trying to make everything happening in the Emirates as what I would say Nescafe, instant coffee. And it's not instant coffee. I mean, there is a long history in the region, beginning by a colonial history in the 19th century, and much before a very long tradition of sharing, of mixing between people coming from Arabia, from Hijaz, and their very close neighbors, who are very, very close, just in front, Iran, India, now Pakistan, and even Balochistan. There is a very long traditional mixing, of course, not forgetting people from what is now Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait, and so on and so forth. So trying to pay attention to the Emirates in a way which is not autistic, in a way which is not trendy. So you know what's happening now, the emerging. I think that the Emirates are not emerging, and you have a certain number of constant in the region. And so trying to give a perspective which would be honest, which would relate to what I saw, to what we are trying to do, and which is trying to project a certain number of formal and cultural and ideas which are not all emerging. So, you know, I don't like at all this idea that there was nothing and now everything will come. I think that at the best, the market, and in this case, we are, of course, speaking about the big Art Dubai and the big market input in the region. At the best, market is creating art merchandise, at the best, but I never saw any market creating artists. It would be the first time. Second, in the region, I think that when you are honest and precise, you can, of course, identify a certain number of formal ideas, proposals. But, you know, when we speak about artists, an artist is first of all, of course, this proposal, formal, conceptual proposal. But as soon as you want to speak of an artist, I mean, it has also to do with a certain social, cultural space, which is accepting the artist, which is even with fictions, even you need a specific cultural and social space, which is not, from my point of view, still entirely defined in the Emirates. So what we did, I mean, we can begin if you want to help me, because it's a little, I'm not too good technically and I will make a mess. Beginning with the big images you shown before. You know, the entrance of the pavilion where you had the big images. What you showed me and I said, this is it. Oh, no, no. Okay, this is here, okay. The pavilion has been divided in, and I'm not speaking about architecture, I mean, we are an architect and it's not my point, has been divided in like 3 spaces. The first one, the entrance, I mean, a French idiot thought it was propaganda. Look at the images and you will see what propaganda it is. This is a very specific editing we did, trying to deal with a very redundant space in the Emirates and in the region, which are the amazing, big, very visible billboards, which are, to a certain extent, of course, they are used by definition in order to protect from works developed, and you have many, many works going on in the Emirates, but which are also what I would call in French l'espace de la promesse, what is promised, what is supposed to come, and to come soon. Wonderful life, dream conditions, and so on and so forth. And so we try to articulate this promise with more real situation from the Emirates, so articulating images which are coming from newspapers, with images which are made by Philippe Chancel, the French photographer, who is finishing a book on the Emirates, using images from the past in order, to see that Abu Dhabi didn't came out in the last 5 years, that Hasselhausen was built in 1760, for instance. So this is, let's say, the entrance space, the palisade, what is promised and what is a little more real. Behind, the second space we have, I don't know if we see it well here, is not conceived as behind as if there were anything hidden. When you are pragmatical and careful and attentive, I don't think that there are so many things which are hidden. So this is, okay, so it's not here. Anyway. So you have to believe me, and after we'll go through the images, I think it's probably more efficient because it's not, this is the second floor, don't worry. So behind we had a certain number, this is more this space. We had a certain number of images dealing with the realities of the Emirates, beginning with the extremely heterogeneous urban reality, so trying to show how cities are, how they look, how people are using it, so showing that, for instance, Dubai is not just Sheikh Zayed Road, you have many other places, you have many different people living into these places, and these views have been developed by artists and people who are working on the region. So including what you have now at the moment on the wall is a work by Mohamed Kazem, which is dealing with the acceleration of time and acceleration of the building of Dubai in the mid-90s. It's a work developed between 97 and 2003. We had also a certain number of images and documents dealing with the past and introducing the work by a major architect, major Arab architect, Dr. Abderrahman Maklouf, who developed most of master plans in Saudi Arabia in the early 60s. He was a master planner for Riyadh, for Jeddah, for Mecca. He went back to Cairo, his city where he was born, and was called in 68 by Sheikh Zayed in order to develop the urban space in Abu Dhabi, so really developing the whole master plan of Abu Dhabi, which is such a strong master plan that even now, when he stayed in, he was responsible till 76, and after you had a new development of Abu Dhabi with very high-rising building, which Maklouf tried to avoid, but now, of course, it's very high-rising. But even with this new development, accelerated development of Abu Dhabi, the master plan is so strong that you still see it very, very precisely in the center, and you see a city where you know, you can experiment different speeds, different atmospheres, which is not always everywhere the case in the Emirates. And the second floor, and after we'll go through the images, because what I have here is a press kit. I got the CD yesterday, and you know, it's a little bit mixed, so I will identify the works one by one. On the first floor, I tried to develop very dry proposal, trying to identify a few major works produced by artists in the last 30 years. And most of these works originating from the place I would identify as the only, with my criteria, only cultural place in the Emirates. I mean, local, genuine, sedimented, articulated cultural place, meaning a place where you work, a place where you meet with people, a place from where you can transmit, a place where you are conscious about your own work, a place where you begin to archive, a place where you begin to profile a certain historical body of work, which is the Flying House in Dubai, and trying to really put into perspective a recent past, a kind of matrix which has been elaborated before, and apart from the very recent rush and booming, and which is, from my point of view, a very promising matrix culturally, a very promising matrix in terms of the discourse which has been produced at the Flying House, and which is, in a way, showing other possible paths for Abu Dhabi and, you know, care more precisely about ADACH, cultural policy, that other paths can be taken than just building big museums. I think that's what happened around this very small circle of very strong individuals, is something of a proto-museum. By proto, I don't mean the prototype. The prototype is something small which will become big. Proto is latent. It's what is and could go on developing, what could be culturally. There is nothing proving me that this will be really developed further. There are a certain number of risks that this very precise, articulated work could be overwhelmed to a certain extent, killed, you know, as you can kill a very strong idea by what's happening with the market and this kind of hysteria going around. And, you know, depending on what kind of cultural policy, depending on what kind of cultural commitment, maybe what you see here can be developed, which doesn't mean repeated. I don't care about artists repeating what they did, but could be developed in a very interesting way in Abu Dhabi, in the Emirates, and of course in a strong dialogue with the region. When I'm speaking about the region, I know it's always a very tricky, difficult word, because I was before in the discussion about Middle East, you know, and the region is really huge, and when you look at the map, it's not a region. You have different entities. So when I'm speaking about the region here, in the context of the Emirates, I'm first of all speaking about the GCC, the Gulf region, of course, including Saudi Arabia. In the project, we had two young, very interesting artists coming, one from Abba, which is southern part of Saudi Arabia, one living in Dubai at the moment, but who were born and educated in Jeddah. But the region, of course, also including the very close, the traditional strong neighbors, Iran, India, Pakistan, and a little further. And I would say the world around, and the Emirates are globalized. It's really like one very strong point now in the world. And there is nowhere the Emirates can escape to globalization, to movement. But I think, first of all, you know, trying to build up something coherent, something dealing with a few specific needs in the region. And after that, you know, we enter into what I would identify as cultural policies, you know, when you have so many people just obsessed with the Emirates and the Arab world. I'm very sorry. They are the United Arab Emirates. Of course, you speak, I mean, 15% of the population is speaking Arabic. Of course, there is a long history with the Hijaz and Arabia. Of course, there is a recent history of the 50s and 60s with so many teachers coming from Egypt and Palestine mainly. But when you are in the street, when you are discussing with people, you see that there is a very strong dynamic going east. Now, India, Iran, and also because of the presence of many people originating from these regions. And that, when you think about Arab culture, it has also to do with identification processes. To whom you want to identify, to whom you want to inherit it, and we all know, or at least when you are very familiar of certain major Arab cities and that you are very familiar with a certain number of Arab artists and intellectuals, that they won't accept so easily to see Cairo, to see Beirut, to see Baghdad, and I should have said Baghdad, Cairo, Beirut for respecting the development of history, delegitimated as cultural cities by the Emirates. So by cultural policy, I would also consider the way you deal with people, the kind of project you offer. And from my point of view, it's really interesting to have the Louvre, Abu Dhabi, and Guggenheim. It's like, importing the Torah, the Torah from the others. Classical culture, granted, halal, correct. But it's also very important, to deal with another legacy which has been extremely neglected, very badly treated, which is the Arab modern. And when you have a certain wealth, when you have possibilities, it's probably also very important to be active in places, in cultural areas where so few people are really wanting to work. And I think it would be probably very important for many young artists. I was discussing yesterday with an Egyptian artist who is my generation, and it was extremely sad to see that the younger generation has not the possibility to connect with the one before. Can see works by artists from the generation before. When you are in Beirut, where would you see Aleph Reyes? Nowhere. Maybe when you know very well a few collectors. So I think that this is eventually other path. I'm not saying it's either or, but I think the cultural project could be, and from my point of view, can be and probably should be wider and more complex. Here, we can go on. For those who are not in Venice, it's a very messy visit because this is a press kit and I didn't do it myself, so God knows what the photographers like. I was speaking about major works which were created in this case Dubai, Hassan Sharif, in the last 30 years, in order to, this is a curatorial decision, but in order to make, I don't know if visible, but understandable the fact that artists were not emerging like potatoes just now, that you are the long, relatively long for the region tradition of modern art and people working. I decided to show the storage of Hassan Sharif in the Flying House, a place where he's putting works, and in this case, these are works from the last 30 years, without the interest for many years, working in kind of autistic conditions, no attention paid to the work, a kind of polite indifference, not necessarily hostility, polite indifference, nobody, no audience, no discussion. This is the way people develop the work, so I really wanted to pay homage to this part of Dubai tradition. Hassan Sharif storage, well known by a few younger artists and well known by a certain number of people who are going to Dubai for a certain number of years and who paid attention to his work. We can other views from we are in the entrance again. But don't panic, this is not the photographer, so this is the work by Mohamed Kazem I was showing. He didn't take any video because he thought it was not photogenic enough, probably. He can go on. This is also work from the early 80s by Hassan Sharif, documenting performances. Again, Hassan Sharif. So on the wall, this is, this is one view. You just see that it's a very long drawing. When you are coming closer, you see a little more precisely. It's work by Abdallah Al-Sadi, who is working in Fujairah, which is a smaller Emirates on the map after Dubai, more in the mountains, very close to Oman, by the way. And it seemed that the other artists didn't interest the photographer. So this is thank you. This is a work by, another work by Mohamed Kazem, a series of between performance and self-portrait he did in the late 80s. And it works from the 80s by Hassan Sharif. Two, it's a door which is in the house and which we transported. Hassan Sharif, early 80s. Hassan Sharif. So I think it's all we have, I guess. What is this? Qu'est-ce que c'est ça? So maybe when this is finally what I was commenting, what I call the laboratory, this space with a certain number of images, works dealing with the reality of the urban context, and to a certain extent how this complex urban context is something as a possible generator of culture, for now that, you have many different ways of being in the city, many different ways of using it, many different ways of mixing or not mixing with people. I remind for those who don't know the Emirates that you have 15% locals, 85% people who are coming from other countries. You have in Dubai more than 90 different nationalities. And of course, in the 85, you have many people who are coming for working, but working under many different conditions. And I will never accept what some people do to mix the expat, would be like you or me when we would decide to go and working in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, and the working force, which is working under very different status, even when things are slowly but surely moving in terms of social attitudes and rules. I'm very conscious I did things very fast because half an hour, you can't elaborate so much on the. I tried to give you a minimum idea of the way I conceive the pavilion, which again is the first appearance of the ADACH platform for visual arts in Venice, in the context of a biennale, in the context of high visibility, when what we do in Abu Dhabi and other cities from the Arab world is more discreet, because we don't have to organize necessarily exhibitions all the time. So I would take with pleasure a question, a remark, a protest.
Hello, Ms. David. My name is Mirna. I work with Canvas magazine in Dubai. I wanted to know a little bit about your selection process for the artists at the ADACH platform. Was there a common denominator, maybe a common theme that you were looking at to represent art from Abu Dhabi or from the United Arab Emirates?
And now that you're asking the question, I realize that, you have, this is a video by Sami Al-Turki, who is a Saudi artist living in Dubai at the moment, and documentaries, artists with film explaining their work and position are not visible here. One dealing with Ahmed Matter, who is an artist from Abba, Saudi Arabia, and one dealing with Abdallah Al-Sadi, who have very different procedures. Adash is in Abu Dhabi, But from the beginning, if you don't understand that the Emirates are not on the moon, that the Emirates are not autistic, I try to consider people working, first of all, in the Emirates, and after we can bridge with other people. There is something I didn't say, and I should have said from the beginning. One of the people who helped me in order to work in the city is K1 Mehta, with a young urbanist coming from Mumbai, which is also obvious that when you are in Dubai that you will deal with. So I try to work with people. I built up the pavilion dealing with the people I was meeting for workshops, for studio visits when I were in Abu Dhabi and the region. There was no at all specific demand from Adash that I would have just Abu Dhabi artists, because I would have been in a very difficult situation. There was no demand that I would have just Emirati artists, and I would say no demand at all. So it's really my responsibility to have 2 Saudi people I met and I found extremely interesting and precise in their work. It's my own responsibility to have invited later, because I just came across his work later, Philippe Chancel with finishing a big book on the Emirates. Philippe Chancel is, maybe some of you know his name. He made a few years ago a major book on North Korea. So I'm not joking here, I'm not making a parallel between North Korea and the Emirates. I was interested in the case of Philippe Chancel, you know, by the confrontation of images which are dealing with very strong symptoms, images which I would put in relation, contrast with images produced by people who are living in the region, who know the codes, so who are able to go much deeper into the urban cultural phenomenology, which Philippe is not interested in plus. And after that, you know, I really wanted to, again, deconstruct a certain number of superficial views and cliches, pay attention to what was recently possible and should keep possible, you know, in the region, and not really playing the game of certain kind of illiterate attitude, which I find not only stupid, but extremely offensive toward the people. So trying to consider that this is, it's a region with specificities, it's a region with different possible scenarios, socially, politically, culturally, and you know, I'm not interested in the one-way scenario, the art fair, the new El Dorado of art market and so on and so forth. It's all for that, but it could be something else too. It's not either or, but you know, trying to insist on strong heterogeneities, which are, from my point of view, more juicy, more able to generate other attitudes. You know. After that, of course, when you would ask me, when you look to most of these works, when you look carefully, you will come to the fact that none of this work is interested in luxury, grandiose, but many of them, also an artist is not visible in this diaporama, Ebtisam Abdulaziz, the filming of the performance she did in Sharjah a few years ago. They are dealing with materialities. Artists are working a lot with, not really object, materialities, complex materialities, which are opposed to one unidimensional one. Artists are dealing with daily life, with different ways of behaving, different ways of inhabiting complexities. And this is, you know, what in a way it was the induction for selecting the people. And again, I didn't want to have any arty pavilion. I didn't want to organize a beautiful showcase, and it's something which has been discussed very frankly with the ADACH authorities, and I have to say without any trouble, the same that I could publish any picture I wanted in the catalog, which is an image book, and even the text, you know, the short introductory text by Sheikh Sultan as mine are published on a flying paper. So meaning that you might have certain number of logistic problems, and it's quite difficult to, to deal with superposition of Venice Italian mess plus Emirati mess. But again, this kind of anything I'm telling you now has been very frankly discussed. And I was really apparently allowed to build the pavilion the way I thought it should be built. So not a beautiful, not inventing artist, or not overframing a few ones, and trying to give more the, not the flavor, I'm not dealing with perfumes or cooking, but to give an idea, an input on the complexity of the situation, and trying to underline a few strong heterogeneities which might be extremely productive when we make choices, as all over in the world, when we are when we have something of a cultural compromise, and when there is something voluntarian in terms of cultural policy. It's all I try to do, nothing more than that.
My name is it on? Yeah. My name is Sissel. I'm from Norway. I was seeing this exhibition in Venice. And I have one question about the dramaturgy of it, the way that you go through an entrance, which is very much putting the place more, you're going through the history of the place to go inside the exhibition of the artist. Could you say something about the way you have distributed that material?
Yeah, I mean, I think I said it in another way, but I can come back and maybe be more precise. The entrance, it's in a way you can also describe it as the way people see themselves, the way they project themselves, and of course edited with a certain number of images, which is more the way I would see the reality, trying to articulate, what people want and what it is. And, in many places in the world, there is what we want and what is. Behind, and again, not behind as hidden. When you are working, there is nothing hidden. Behind, there is something of the laboratory. So what is happening in daily life? The life conditions, how people are moving into that, and what these specific living conditions are producing or could produce. And there is something of a cultural laboratory going on in the Emirates. And there, you saw an articulation of images which were filmed by Nureddin, images of the performance by Ebtissam Abdulaziz, images from Dubai and Abu Dhabi taken by Mohamed Kazem. So, many different ways of looking at the reality. And upstairs, a certain number of works which are close to be historical works, so meaning things which were developed before just now, which are not at all dealing with instant coffee moment, which, I wanted to open different, in French I would say ligne de fuite. I never knew in English how you say that, ligne de fuite. When you try to open a flattened perspective, when you try to pay attention to different speeds, different ways of doing, and simply, I would say on the first floor, just paying homage to a few very strong individuals who were able to go on doing what they had to do. Again, in an autistic situation, which I hope will change, that now they can work out with more interchange, with more visibility, and being less of autistic space, and that it's what they would like to do, Even if you could say that the Hassan Sharif situation is very different from the one of Abdallah Al-Fadi. Abdallah is very happy to be alone and in peace in his mountains. So it's not autistic, it's just distant, which is another way of behaving. So trying to identify a certain number of strong individualities. And again, people, it's always a little, when you have half an hour, when you are dealing with bad photography, it's all, but again, when you pay attention to the works, it looks like works. Really, like there is a beginning of earth which have been developed. So I would like people to pay attention to that. I would like to hear a little less this very cheap, very easy ironization on what's happening in the Emirates. A certain number of given are there, and a certain number of things could develop a little different than the Palm Island and so on. And not just that, and a little different than the final apocalypse. I think what is probably very disturbing for many people with the Emirates, and eventually for people who didn't go, because when you go, you have to come across real. It's not on the moon, it's just a little further than Egypt and Lebanon. It's probably that it's just putting just into your face, the situation we are living in, but with a kind of loop effect. When you look from this tool you use when you are a little short-sighted like me, you put it on a on something, and it's appearing very big. And I think that probably what is extremely disturbing, I'm not a psychoanalyst, but what is extremely disturbing for many people with what's happening in the Gulf region is that it's in what we are living, but bigger and from closer. And of course, it's extremely, probably, I don't know if disturbing, but some people don't feel at ease with that. And it's not a reason for being too fast and sometimes racistic, you know. I mean, I will never accept that people are just full of despise just because Arab have money. Why not? Please, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, but I think you're criticizing the region and the leaders of that country a little bit too much. Don't you think so?
I don't think so. I think there is no critic, you know. I think that when you are a little pragmatical, you know, the only thing you would say wherever you go, and in this case, I would go for the region and further for the Arab world and the large region, which is not a region. Societies are ahead from the regimes. It's how it is. We have to be honest.
Societies are ahead of the regimes?
Yes.
Well, maybe I think somebody from Abu Dhabi will be able to understand it and explain it a little bit more.
Some people, at least. It's not so unique, you know? It's not so unique.
What do you mean it's not so unique?
It's not so unique in the region that you have a society which is ahead from the political circumstances. And you have to deal with that. No?
No, I don't think I understand what you meant.
You don't understand.
Can you give me an example?
I mean, just you go, I mean, you get out, you know, I received the French delegation, and of course nobody had left. They didn't walk outside from Emirates Palace. Of course, if you stay in Emirates Palace, you will see a very strange society. Of course. If you stay in Sheikh Zayed Road in Dubai, you will see a very strange society. If you move around, if you walk, you will see what I'm speaking about. A society where people are obliged to negotiate, a society where you have temporary appropriation of space, a society where you see slowly but surely a certain number of things redefined, and so on and so forth. It's not critical, it's the opposite. I think people who are just playing a very cynical game and trying to be ironical, much more, you know, in a way, critical than I do. I'm pragmatical. I don't think I'm critical about,
no, I think you're being a bit cynical, and you're curator of the ADACH platform, so you are like the ambassador of what Abu Dhabi is trying to do in Venice or in the art world or
surely
even
not.
in the Middle East
I mean,
region.
I'm responsible for the pavilion. I'm not the ambassador of anybody. I'm not a civil
pavilion or a
servant.
platform?
I mean, it's ADACH platform for visual art, and the platform, I explained before, and probably I was not precise enough, the platform is a series of initiatives. So it's not pop platform, or it's a platform, you know, you have many platforms. It's a space for initiatives.
I'm sorry, may I ask the audience member, what did you find cynical? Could you be more specific with the cynicism?
I didn't understand. I understood what she was saying, but I found her a little bit too critical of the leaders of the country, the nationals from the country, the artists living in the country. I think she should give them a little bit more of a chance. At the end of the day, it's the first time they participate in Venice.
But I think you didn't get it at all. I mean,
maybe I misunderstood it.
Not completely, because I was precisely saying that I wanted to be honest. I wanted to introduce the energies, the dynamics, and trying to show them where they are, and not playing the game of there is nothing, you know, when you want to discuss what's happening in the country. I would like, if you know Abu Dhabi very well, did you see Emirati Expressions exhibition? I tried to do something slightly different, a little more honest and a little more respectful of people and artists. So it's, you know, okay. So I guess I mean, I have no problem disagreeing, because I'm always very anxious when everybody's agreeing with me. But, you know, maybe you know, it's half an hour, maybe I was not precise enough, maybe the pictures are, the pictures are not good, and so on and so forth. But really, it's not, I mean, I always said, and again, what I'm telling you, I told the people from Adash. You know, I would also stop with this, you don't change your No, I'm too old. I don't need any countryside house, so I'm very free in life. It's my only luxury. And frankly, it was all discussed. And I think that, again, I said I want to be pragmatical. I don't want to play the very cheap and easy game of being something between cynical and ironical, which is the attitude of many of my colleagues. So that you tell me that the pavilion is not okay, I can accept very well. But telling me that I'm cynical, I think that this I don't accept.
I was just wondering, beyond Venice, beyond the presentation, are you going to be involved in the development of any cultural programs in Abu Dhabi beyond what you did in Venice?
It could be.
Your work could actually end here, or you've got something planned?
I mean, you know, it's not depending just on me. And as I said before, I'm interested in projects which are dealing with modern Arab, so with researching, with helping people who are working, but under very difficult conditions, and trying to keep a balance between this contemporary, this emerging spiral, and paying attention to what happened.
But you don't have any specific plans to continue working in Abu Dhabi?
I think I have a few plans for myself, and now I have to see if my plans are fitting with Adash plans.
Okay, thank you.
But I know what I want to do.
You don't want to talk about that?
I mean, I can't speak about things which are not public and official. And I would do the same with the French ministry.
And we have time for one more question.
No, I just wanted to add that Madame David is curating Middle Eastern photographers at the Paris Photo later this year.
So precisely, I'm curating the statement. You know, it's an art fair, and each year you have a country invited. This time it's more of a huge region because it's Arab world and Iran. Because Iran is not Arab, you know, so some people still believe it's not, definitively not. And so this is this very small curated space into Paris Photo. So that's all I'm